All right, welcome everyone to another Rocket Dollar webinar today. Just so you know, these are always being recorded. We always put them to YouTube and our website for 24 hours after. But really excited to have Corinn here to talk about self-storage today. A very important real estate investment class. We saw a higher registration numbers for this webinar than some other recent real estate webinars. And I think that's just showing, more people are becoming aware of this asset class. And there's many longtime real estate investors that like it for its resilience. And, Corinn, we were just talking before we're getting started. I just had a podcast kind of talking about an interesting kind of socioeconomic topic. There's continuously people moving out of, sometimes coastal, more expensive cities, really popular kind of jewels of America, like New York or LA and San Francisco. And, people are migrating to these, other mid-sized cities, rural areas with this remote work kind of revolution. And, what do they need to do when they're moving stuff around is they often need to use self-storage like I did. So Corinn, why don't you introduce yourself and then we can get into some of the material that you brought here today.
Absolutely. Let me start sharing.
We do have a poll too, Corinn, if you can tee that up and then I'll kick that off.
Yeah, so I always love to hear who I've got in the audience, who I'm speaking with, so that I can have a better sense of maybe customizing what I'm going to talk about or just speak to any specific interest. So I'd love to see, I think, Brendan, you've got a poll for experience level. If you wouldn't mind filling that out. Today's session is not going to be a why is self-storage such a great investment? There's so much other content out there. Today, I'm really truly just sharing my stories of our direct experience in storage across the multiple projects that we've had now. So it'll be very, very short and simple. I hope I prepared a simple presentation. Hopefully you're seeing the screen all right. So acknowledging that these are very interesting times, and as we consider the future performance of the stock market, the state of our world, and how we can take the best action to protect ourselves and our family financials, I just want to say thank you for spending your most precious asset, which is your time, to be here today. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who showed up. My dearest intention is that you find this a worthwhile use of your being here. So our agenda, as I mentioned, will be very straightforward. I will step through 3 case studies of actual projects. And as I do, you'll no doubt pick up on some common themes as we have standardized on certain business operations, tech stack, and approaches to our investing as we've scaled our business platform. And then each case study will also have its own unique identifiers, one from the other. We try to continually bring diverse offerings to our community and to our investors to meet different investment criteria, risk tolerance levels, appetites for length of investment, and all of that. So enough similarities to see the common thread and enough differences for this to be an interesting use of the next few minutes here.
Great. And thanks for everyone for answering the poll. So Corinn, we got about 2/3 of people consider themselves novices. The other third are in the moderate to expert category.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So maybe at the end then in Q&A, we can maybe go into some more, any other foundational questions that some of the novices might have. So first and foremost, my name is Corinn Altomare. My firm, Hearthfire Holdings, has been around now for 11 years. So we started in multifamily, and I came to real estate. My previous career was in the arts. And so I came to real estate as a way to build passive income and a little bit stronger financial foundation for myself and for my loved ones so that I could continue pursuing my passions without requiring those passions to also pay the bills. So in 2012, I bought my first multifamily Shortly thereafter, we started purchasing multifamilies together, my partner Sergio and I, and then with family and friends. So from 2012 to 2018, we did a total of 5 syndications as well as 4 personal investments. So all in 9 projects during that point in time. This was a side hustle at first, and our day job was working for the Federal Reserve System. So working in those halls and around, we weren't economists. I was an IT project manager, and Sergio an enterprise architect. So while we were not economists, we spent enough time around and with them to learn some of the basics of economic cycles. And so we're really expecting a market downturn somewhere around 2018 to 2020, tracking back to the recession in 2008. And so playing a little bit of proactive defense there, we started looking for a different asset. And we also wanted to scale up and grow our business. Everything that we learned and experienced in those first 6 years of this being a side hustle, we wanted to go bigger, for this to be our full-time thing. I left my W-2 in 2016, and Sergio in 2017. And so for all of those reasons combined, we came upon self-storage, did everything in our power to learn as much as we possibly could about it, educated our limited partners, our family, our other investors about it and why we were excited about making the shift from multifamily to storage, and then successfully did so by closing on our first acquisition in 2019. We acquired 10 more locations in 21, 4 more last year. And so far this year, we're under contract for 4 more. So that's a little bit about how we got here today. So diving into our first case study, coming from multifamily, coming from our day jobs, working in quasi-corporate, very heavy tech and project management space, we wanted our first self-storage project to be simply technology, business operations focused. We didn't want to take on any ground up development or any major CapEx projects. And so this first one was truly the perfect fit for us as we entered this space. The investment thesis here was just to get into the asset class and get started. And this truly was a great opportunity for us to flex all of the expertise that we had from our day jobs. There was no technology here. There was no revenue management or really some of that more automated business operations that you can implement in self-storage thanks to the tools that we have now. This was run by a husband-wife team, and it was run by the husband and his father before that. So it was a beautiful profile of independent operator, Sergio and I as a husband-wife team, with our pool of investors primarily made up of our family and incredibly close friends. It was competitive to bid and get our offer accepted on this one. The way that we were able to differentiate ourselves was through a personal cover letter and a generous earnest money deposit through a broker that we had developed a relationship with since we had made that conscious pivot into wanting to get into storage. We spent a solid 18 months underwriting and making offers and creating relationships with brokers in this space. And so all of that came to fruition in this first project. And so once we took over, and once this project was ours, day one, really day zero, was getting technology implemented. And so in self-storage, technology looks like, first and foremost, converting from paper and pen to databases and online systems and using the computer. So this facility itself was still paper and pen, had a serviceable website, but the operator really didn't utilize it at all. And phone systems, just rang through to the owner operator. So first and foremost was getting all of those paper records input into a facility management system, building out the revenue management rules so that we could really make the most of what we were charging for our customers, as well as providing a more mobile friendly experience. And and bringing operations into current times. Now, we were able to get all of this up and running and operating just in time before COVID came in and shut down the world. So we were able to really seamlessly transition to contactless, running everything remotely. Storage was an essential service, so we were open for business for the entire length of the lockdowns. And so all of that tech first work that we put in served us incredibly well to not only weather the storm of COVID, but also has been and continues to be our baseline in how we operate our facilities. So getting back to the actual tangibles, what does tech look like in storage? That looks like you search on your smartphone for storage near me. Our location pops up. You're able to quickly and easily navigate our site to see what's available, what fits most your needs. If you need a 5x5 for a closet, really size space, or if you need a 10x20 for a car or a garage full of things, reserve that, pay for it online, e-signature of all your documents online, and then you get sent a gate code and can start moving in all within minutes. So all of that tech back end, it's quick to talk through it now. Of course, there's tons of moving parts to get it all up and running, but that's the foundational of our really tech stack. And then from there, once you get the facility management system set up and running, what we also do is integrate all of our gates, keypads, so that if or when we have tenants who are perhaps behind on their payments, their code is automatically locked out of the gate. They can't access the site. Auto payments, we now at scale have call center for support. In the early days, we used Google Voice, and whoever could pick up the phone would. And then that tech and kind of self-serve functionality continues all the way through the customer life cycle till the text to they're ready to move out. So we have a text to move out feature with signs throughout the facility, QR codes where you can just text to move out, and really quite seamless process from start to finish of the entire life cycle there for our customers. Something else that we do is charge tenant insurance. What this does is deliver peace of mind to our customers that their belongings, should, God forbid, any sorts of disasters occur, that they have coverage to recoup any of the cost of those belongings. What that also does is add to our bottom line as ancillary income. And then as we're bringing these improvements and ideally bringing better customer service and customer experience, bringing our rates up to meet market prices. Oftentimes, and certainly with this site, prices had not been raised in years and years and years. So there was plenty of room to bring those rent rates up. For example, not this site, but another one, when we purchased it, the rent rates were at $13 a square foot in a market where they really were 26. So that's a very easy way to immediately drive value on the property to our investors by simply bringing market rates up to where they should be nowadays.
Corinn, just a quick question or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all this technology upgrades that you've talked about, the self-storage industry, pretty old school, you would say. Like, if you're looking at 10 self-storage units kind of across the country, how many would you say are on a really old school system, like paper and pen, or really awful subpar websites and stuff like that?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure I would have an answer, but a more generic answer to that question goes to market share, and I believe it's something like 40% of operators are still existing mom and pops or independents, if you will. That number might be higher. I think I have that further down in the deck. And so you could reasonably assume that there would be a decent amount of those more smaller, more rural, more independent operators where you will see perhaps a little bit more of that. Now, I mean, there's so much technology in our world right now that I think that bar is getting that number is getting lower and lower as folks adopt, but I'm still amazed. I was just out in Vegas last month for the Inside Self-Storage Expo. I was speaking there, and I did encounter plenty of other operators who were considering raising their rates or considering bringing a facility management system, a SiteLink or a StoreEdge to their operations. So it's still out there. I would say the opportunities are much fewer and further between. We as a firm have pivoted and are doing more ground up development right now, more repositions. So maybe vacant, what was a Kmart or something like that, repositioning those retail or commercial spaces and bringing storage to those types of properties, simply because we're not yet seeing prices adjust from sellers to account for the rise in interest rates and all of that. So we're seeing less existing facilities that pencil for us right now. It is still in our acquisition target for this year, but we are doing primarily more ground up development. We're seeing better yield there, and some of these repositions or larger expansions, which I'll share at least one of in one of our next case studies.
Great. And, as this asset class, it's like a story of many different asset classes. It seems like it's becoming more professional.
Yes.
And that's great for investors, but also for deal runners or issuers. There's like a lot more competition. Maybe great for that mom and pop that, 10 years ago, they might have got 1 or 2 offers. Now they might have like 4 approaching when they're considering a sale or considering about getting out of the business. So the issuers have to adjust and make sure they're going after the right type of deals.
Yep. And that's ultimately our end goal as well, as we're acquiring facilities so it's not in my case studies today, but following this facility, we acquired 5 more within an hour drive range of this location to build up and to build up a kind of mini market dominance, if you will. We were able to implement the hub and spoke model where we have one manager that shares time across those total 6 sites in that location, spread the expenses and all of that. So when we do enter a new market now, that is our goal, is to not enter with just one, but enter with multiples, so that we can really then put together a portfolio that will be institutional grade once we're done implementing our business plan, and ultimately for an institutional portfolio sale in, call it 5 to 7 years. So that's exactly our kind of macro strategy here as well, is preparing packages for the institutional buyers who we are now seeing come to secondary and tertiary markets, where historically they have not. They've primarily operated only in top 50 MSAs, but now as they're looking for more deals, or maybe have mandates to add more storage into their commercial real estate portfolio, we're seeing more appetite for going further afield, which is exactly where we are operating and building now.
Great. Okay. And we can go to your next case study, I think.
Sure, absolutely. So from this one we ended up selling early, simply because of where the numbers were, where the market was. It made the most sense to deliver that to our investors. So we then deployed through 1031 exchange that capital gains into acquisition of 2 more locations. And one of these locations is in a new market that we entered into with case study number 2.
And just so the investors know, a 1031, very popular tax saving move for taxable accounts. So we have a lot of new self-directed IRA investors. They might have done plenty of 1031s in the past, and they ask, hey, can I do this inside of a self-directed IRA as well? And the answer is no. That's not really a huge bad thing, is because when you're in a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, you're typically tax-free on your investment. There is a rare tax called UBIT that can hit these accounts in certain circumstances, but our solo 401k does also offer protection for that. So if you're looking to do something with a real estate property, maybe you haven't entered it yet, or you're about to, typically your 1031 stuff has to stay on the other side of your portfolio, on your totally taxable side, and that's great tax break you can get through there. When you're looking through a self-directed IRA, you're to protect yourself totally from capital gains. And the 1031 is not really necessary. You can sell that asset, or if there is an exit from the issuer, you can immediately go put that tax-free, not going to pay taxes in that current year. You can go put that in another opportunity. Please feel free, anyone, to jump in the Q&A if there's something that you'd like further context on, or you'd like Corinn to answer, or otherwise I'll try to be the voice of the novices out there and asking questions. But
thank you. Thank you, Brendan. Yeah, so so from the sale of that one property, we're acquiring two. Both of those, we are more than doubling the footprint. As you can see, these are renderings of what we are putting into those spaces now, multi-level climate control. So we are now, I mentioned diversity across our investment kind of profile. So we are now doing more ground up development, larger expansions, bringing higher quality products to market in locations or on footprints where there's perhaps older vintage quality of storage here, maybe late 80s or early 90s here. So we're really maximizing the square footage with these next acquisitions. One of them is in Indiana. So that brings us to case study number 2, which was a really big step for us because this is where we went out of state. So our Pennsylvania portfolio, case study number 1, is in our backyard. We managed it for the first few months, and then we are an hour away from it. So we were regularly out there meeting with the managers and overseeing the managers in the day-to-day. This was an immediate portfolio acquisition where we acquired 5 sites in one acquisition. It's a combination of a pocket listing, so again, through broker relationships, as well as direct from the seller. So we married all of that together into one acquisition. This was a fund acquisition as well. So we've done a mix of acquiring direct properties and then also fund model. We can talk about that a little bit more later, Brendan, or go into it now. And so this also was kind of expanding our original thesis of acquiring small facilities in secondary, tertiary markets, right? Bringing them up to speed and modernizing them from the tech stack perspective, as well as from business operations, revenue management, and all of that. So the variable here was going out of state and entering a new market. Now, this market is LaPorte, Indiana. It's on the furthest edge of Chicagoland MSA, right along Lake Michigan. It has very strong manufacturing roots, and with all that infrastructure in the region, by road, rail, boat, or air, a cargo container can get shipped to any place on the planet within 4 days, or to 40 million people across our country within a half-day drive. It's also worth noting, especially nowadays, as we're seeing more talk about nearshoring and bringing manufacturing back to our continent. We acquired this facility in November of 21. In December of 21, Canadian Pacific Railway bought Kansas City Southern. And so by those two companies merging, they created the only single line railway that links Canada, the US, and Mexico. It runs right through Chicago, right? So being a part of, on the fringe of the Chicagoland MSA, we liked all of these undercurrent of macroeconomic kind of indicators in the area. It also tied together the rail line, at least that merger, auto production from Canada, Detroit, and Mexico. So we have a single service line for vehicles that are produced in Mexico, then delivered to our consumer markets here in the US through the Midwest hubs, Canada. So with all of that going on, this market also is 14 miles from Lake Michigan shoreline. So it's also a summer tourist destination. It's also seen multifamily development. There's a $35 million mixed use community that had its grand opening just last October. 2 of our facilities are within 3 miles of this. And it has an additional phase 2 that's bringing another 150 multifamily apartment units to the community. So for all these reasons and more, that's 50,000 foot level, we were really excited and ready to step into a new market. Brendan, sounds like you have a question.
Yeah, we had a question come in, and I also grew up around the Chicagoland area. So just to try and understand the type of clients that you're looking for. I see, are these some bigger garage units and maybe some commercial type units as well?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so we have kind of like luxury man cave units, these big on the far bottom right, these big, these are, I think, 20 by 40s or 30 by 40s. Some of these have showers and like crash pads inside them. There's a lot of boats, a lot of those sorts of things, right? Like second boats, second cars. The guys all come down on the weekends and hang out here because they're so close to the shore, right? So there is a mix of that going on, as well as, you know, your standard customer and clientele. I couldn't give you our exact breakdown of, I don't know actually if we've dug into this data of what the percentage of our clients are, from personal individuals to businesses to, you know, manufacturers or folks that are storing inventory or materials for, like, I know in our Pennsylvania portfolio, we have landscapers and customers that have those big 40-foot trucks for either gravel landscaping types of things or tree trimming and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That was a
And
long-winded answer to your question.
yeah, and I think Anish in the audience asked this, and this was something that I didn't quite understand, and I saw someone posting online about it. But these type of much larger garages, it's almost like a totally different type of customer. This is not a customer that just comes and drops 4 boxes and then leaves and never comes back for 6 months. This might be a semi-business, maybe a side business, maybe as you saying, like a man cave type, like hobbyist. Maybe they're working, they're almost using it more like a workshop or like a business extension. You know, maybe not a personal storefront, but they might be working some parts of their business or personal life out of this location, where that hobby or that side business just really wouldn't function in, or doesn't make enough money yet for like a full dedicated space, like buying out rental storefront. So this allows these people a really temporary space or semi-permanent space to kind of expand their hobby or operation, working on a car, you know, being able to store big materials there. And then if the business doesn't work out or never takes off, or their hobby, their family makes them sell it, they can just kind of move on and then stop paying rent and pull their assets out of the unit.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Any other questions while we're paused?
Yeah, and I think Anish was asking about the rail stuff and self-storage demand. I mean, I grew up around Chicago. It's always been a transportation hub. I think Anish was just looking for that link too. How does that relate to actual clients and customers?
So more just showing the strength of the market in general, right? You don't want to be buying any kind of real estate asset in a market that's on the decline. And so for us, just showing all of this kind of manufacturing and infrastructure activity. There's also the Economic Development Council in LaPorte County is very active, and there have been some changes in legislation recently to make it more friendly to self-storage operators, where the business is only valuated on the real estate asset, not on the additional business income. So I share all of that, and I'm sorry if it's a bit of a red herring or if it takes it off track, but I share all of that to explain some of the other market things that we look for as we're entering a new market, and why we believe so strongly in, and we continue to invest actually in this market with an acquisition that we closed on just last December, where we're doing some significant expansion. So didn't mean to completely derail everything from storage by talking about railroads, but I think that it's important to look at all the other economic and employer activity that's going on in the area, because that's going to inform the people that you have moving into the area, how the cities and the population in general is performing, because ultimately self-storage is providing a service to your local population.
Yeah,
hopefully that answers.
Northwest Indiana too, just as a region, you know, it's an extension of Chicago. It's kind of an extension of being near Michigan too. It's just, you know, some of these areas are seeing development, and, you know, you don't want to build a self-storage unit or own one where not a single person comes through
Right.
or has any money there. Right.
So that's a big part of our underwriting as we're looking in markets and continuing to survey, and especially as we're doing expansions and things like that, of making sure that really validating that there's demand for what we're bringing to the market. We never want to oversaturate a market, right? That's the biggest risk in storage, because it's a supply demand business. So we want to make sure that anytime we're entering, there's really two sides of this strategy for why we target entering markets with more than one acquisition or very quickly building up a portfolio. Is there's going to be competition in any given market. If we can be competing ourselves by really cornering the market and being the largest presence in there, then we can control market rates and prices. And then we're also squeezing out any other external competition, right? So someone who knows what they're doing in underwriting, if they see that there's already 7 foot per square person in that market, if they're a smart underwriter and they don't want to, risk oversaturating the market, they won't move in. And so that's, multiple reasons for why anytime we're entering a new market, we try to come in with multiple site presence. Went down a couple different rabbit holes there. Let me make sure that I get us back on track here. So talked about acquisitions, kind of our investment thesis for why we entered this area. I talked about how we acquired it through pocket listing. These were all individually operated sites. So we brought them underneath our brand, consolidated that presence, and implemented the hub and spoke model here as well. So we had one manager across multiple sites. And some of these smaller sites are completely unmanned. So we just have big and bold signage on the front with a QR code saying, welcome, this is completely unmanned. Scan this QR code to get anything and everything you need. And we have a full service call center as well. So here, same thing from the tech backend, the facility management software that we use, gate keypad integration, all that mobile enablement, same thing here. And this acquisition from November 21, this is a 5 to 7 year hold. So we're still implementing our business plan. But where we are now in the project, we have been able to drop the expense ratio 10%. We've raised our rent per square foot across the board, $2 square foot. We went from 0 to single digit tenant insurance to 75% enrollment on tenant insurance. So all of those small incremental improvements at scale, which is the game that we're playing here, $1, $2 per door per site, when you're talking about 5 sites, each with 50 to 100 doors or more, every single dollar and cent starts to add up and delivers a big impact to our investors. So next case study, also in this Midwest region. So this is kind of an extension of our presence in the Indiana market. This is Crete, Illinois, about 40 minutes from our Indiana portfolio. And so again, another kind of incremental expansion upon our original investment thesis in, we'll call this solidly tertiary market. And what's new with this case study is the significant size expansion. So this is, as you can see in the bottom right-hand picture, this is the rear of the lot, existing storage, some not mobile units, but some movable units here, as well as kind of slipshod, just park as you will, where you will. The front of the lot, which is in the upper right photo, is where we are adding an additional 34,000 net rentable square feet. So this is where we started stepping a little bit further into more construction, more development. At this point in our company life cycle, we had added more resources to our team. We're starting to bring more of that construction expertise in-house, where we could confidently take on a project like this. And so here, in this market, our supply demand study showed plenty of demand for us bringing additional units to the market. We are bringing climate control to a market where there isn't much of that. So bringing a new type of storage product, and also expanding upon our presence in Indiana. This is kind of just far enough away where it does merit one additional part-time manager to supplement, so that our Indiana manager isn't running across state lines. And we'll certainly beef that up once the building gets out of the ground and we're doing lease up there. But so this was, this is in progress now. We're actually breaking ground next month. And this is with the size of that expansion. The profile of this project is different for these investors in that there isn't any cash flow really until once that building gets up and we get significantly leased up. So this is more of a hold and wait until about year 4, which is when the distributions will start. The other projects that I shared had distributions really throughout the life cycle. For the first one that we're now fully exited, that one was throughout the life cycle. I want to say from probably about month 12, and then same for the second case study. So those are spinning off quarterly distributions, and then the really largest gain will be upon the recap or the sale once we're completely finished with implementing the business plan. So slightly different profile of investment here. There's a larger equity multiple on the end simply because we're bringing so much new product to what's otherwise just a vacant field. And so there's a larger equity multiplier on the end of the project, but less cash flow. So whenever I'm speaking with investor partners, it's important for me to hear what's most important, what their risk tolerance is, what their kind of timeline is, so that we can, because we have a couple different types of things going on, match the right investor to the project that best meets their needs. So here, when we acquired it, 0 insurance, we now have a 60% insurance penetration rate. The delinquency here was pretty bad. It was at 14%. So by implementing standard auction procedures, we've got that down to 2% now. And we'll be breaking ground next month, 15 months post closing. Any questions? I think I saw a Q&A pop up.
We had one come in, I think, what's typically a minimum investment that you put out to investors? And then do you work with accredited only or some retail investors as well?
Yeah, so our minimum is 50,000, and we really primarily have been for sophisticated investors only. Now, to qualify for that, we have to have pre-existing relationships. So if that is you, then please don't be shy about reaching out to me after today so that we can start to get to know one another and qualify you for future investment opportunities. But historically, I probably glossed over this in the intro of who I am and why I'm here today. But the whole reason why we started this was because we personally discovered what a powerful vehicle real estate investing is, and then wanted to share that. So first with our family, and both Sergio and I come from, I'll say, modest beginnings. Sergio's parents came over from Italy. His father was a tailor, his mother was a seamstress, and they met in the sweatshops here in Philadelphia. My parents were both first to go to college, and so there was no awareness to what incredible financial gains you can get by investing in real estate. And so our first syndications, and really our core syndications, have been to bring this to folks who are just starting to learn about and otherwise not have access to the types of investments that accredited folks do. Now going forward, simply because we are doing more and larger projects, we probably will do a little bit more of the 506c for accredited investors only. But because of our beginnings and because of our personal feelings, we will always continue to offer options for sophisticated investors as well.
Great, thanks. And
that was a long answer.
So yeah, thanks for answering that. And you said the biggest learning experience from this property was probably the delinquency rates and how to increase those. What would you say the biggest learning experience was from each of these?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question. So the biggest learning experience from going from multifamily to case study 1 is that this is a team sport. And in our 9 multifamily projects, that was a side hustle, and we did everything ourselves, even down to like hanging drywall, doing some basic plumbing, painting. I outsourced flooring and electrical. And so you saw or maybe you saw in those first from 2012 to 2018, 9 multifamily projects, but we were trying to do it all ourselves and not getting as far as we have been able to now with storage. The biggest lesson has been building a team of experts around us who will complement one another's strengths and weaknesses. And so as a result, by building this team around us, we've been able to really build our self-storage efforts into something so much more than in what now, 4 years. I mean, August will be 4 years compared to the 6 years that we spent really scratching for every single thing in multifamily. So that's the absolute biggest lesson, is building the team. And then from case study 1, the biggest lesson there was really reinforcing our theory about implementing tech first, right? None of us saw that COVID was coming. The fact that we were so focused on getting all of that technology and back-end software and systems up and running allowed us to continue operating through all kinds of storms that came to all of us in 2020. So really reinforce that. And then the sale and the returns of that reinforced that we were on the right path with our focus on secondary borderline tertiary markets, right, for a larger institutional buyer to come in once we had brought the property up to closer to institutional grade or large private equity firm grade. So that really, I mean, we saw that, we went full cycle there. So that reinforced our thesis there. Case study number 2 with the Indiana portfolio. Biggest learning lesson there is embracing the fear of going out of state and continuing to expand our capabilities and being able to do it. And of course, you're going to learn things along the way, but really stretching our wings and learning how to, I mean, this comes back to team, right? But learning how to identify talent, the right talent, and incentivize and keep the good ones close and let the folks that aren't a right community or company fit, let them go, right? So growing, and there's a lot of that as you go out of state, as you grow, because you're having to bring in other resources, right? This is not a portfolio of properties that I can drive to myself to see. So learning how to delegate, learning how to scale our company and identify trusted partners that have similar morals and centers that get the vision and want to grow this with us. And then the biggest lesson from here, case study number 3, would be COVID construction delays, right? But we're breaking ground. So we are about 6 months behind on this. There's been just so much that has impacted construction and supply chain and all of that, but we are still moving forward. We have re-underwritten the project and with some of our new, more established, more experienced resources that we've now brought to the team. And it's actually going to be cash flowing sooner than originally projected, even with everything else, because we've been able to bring in more expert quality team members around us to find those knobs where just incremental changes at scale mean really massive impact. So those are some lessons learned. One other,
a whole bunch of questions popping in here. So any last comments, or want to go to those?
One more thing that I wanted to share just on this one specifically. And it's really to the point of how we started with our limited partners, investors being family and incredibly close friends. And now as our investor list has grown, we've got about 172, I think, investors with us now. So something new that we launched with this construction project, because construction was new to us as well, was 24/7 cameras where we share the login with our investors so that now we implemented them for ourselves so that we can better remotely manage and track the project process. And as we were looking at it, we were like, well, this is such a cool tool. Why don't we share this with investors? So at any time they can log in and actually watch the project come out of the ground. So I think that's a level of transparency and commitment that we're making to our investors that I think it's a differentiator. I don't see every other, it's not an inexpensive tool, but we felt like it was important, especially in today's environment that our investors feel completely part of every step of the process, and that we're not hiding anything from them. And so, in fact, I had an investor reach out this week and say, hey, I logged in and I didn't see any activity in there recently. Are we at a standstill? What's going on? And I was so happy to hear from them, because that tells me that they're logging in and that they're looking and that they're taking part. And the answer was the team is working in the rear of the facility, working on the water retention and working on some groundwork where all of that parking was, where we're cleaning a lot of that up. We're cleaning out a lot of brush. We're adding more square footage that will ultimately be revenue generating. And we unfortunately don't have cameras back there. So that's all the work that's going on there now. Things will start happening in the front of the property soon where they can watch all of that go. But I was just thrilled to hear that somebody's logging in and watching and feels comfortable asking questions and talking with us about it, because these are truly our partners, right? Our investors are our partners in this entire journey.
We got some live questions here. I'm gonna have to dive in
that's it. That's all I got then.
Before we get more of them. And yeah, that's where you contact Corinn. We'll just leave that screen up there so we can have the contact up there.
Perfect.
Questions about returns, we can gloss over this one, or you can answer as much as you feel comfortable. I always tell presenters, and I also tell audience members, issuers have to be careful about what they talk about in a live webinar, and everyone has restrictions. So someone asked, what's your average cash on cash return? You can say as much or as little as you like, or have follow-up afterwards.
Okay, I think I can tell you our underwriting targets for now and going forward. Cash on cash, 7 to 9%, 16 to 20% IRR, 8.25 to 9.25 yield on cost, and a 1.8 to 2.2 equity multiple. Those are the ranges that when we're underwriting for a project to pencil for us, those are the ranges that the project has to be in. Historically, in our multifamily investments, now historic performance is no guarantee of future results, right? So disclaimer there, but in our multifamily, we delivered average 25% IRR across those multiples, about a 2x equity multiple. And then in our one full cycle in storage, so far, we've delivered just over 30% IRR and just over 2x equity multiple. Everything else in our portfolio, we currently have 14 sites. Everything else is still in progress, right? On that path of a 5 to 7 year business plan. But hopefully that answers enough of those questions.
Yeah, that's funny. Thank you. And I'm going to skip down to another one. We'll go back to the earlier questions. But when you do a project or an investment, is that typically a couple locations bundled into one investment that investors are getting exposure to? Or when an investor comes and invests, it's like one offering, one storage location?
So we've done both. So we've structured direct property acquisitions as well as funds. And so, it'll depend on what's in the pipeline. And then we try to match if you're on our contact list, you'll see what's coming out. I'll try to reach out to those specifically who I know what your direct investment criteria is, but there are more investors than there are of me. So we have a direct investment that we just did for our non-accredited investors. We are structuring a fund right now that will be launching within the next 2 to 4 weeks, which we think is, the time is right for more of a fund model, since that'll provide investors really maximum downside risk protection. You're diversifying across multiple different acquisitions, probably some varying, but within similar constraints, return profiles, different geographic footprints, certainly as we're expanding into other markets, still within our kind of Northeast Mid-Atlantic footprint, but we are branching out into newer markets. We haven't officially launched that fund yet, so I can't talk much more about it, I don't think, but we are going that model next in the immediate near future. And that the fund model will be for accredited investors only, is what I'm being told from our attorneys.
Okay. So David just said, hey, you did a great job on the webinar today, but was wanting to know, like, who's supporting you and your husband kind of, so when you have a support team, what does that kind of entail on your more like overall operations? I think you mentioned like local managers as well of the properties.
Yeah, so we've got a team of about 15. As far as who's directly supporting us, well, so our COO, I should start there, or maybe I should start at so let me think about the life cycle of projects. Let me start with our acquisitions manager, or director of acquisitions, I think is his title, Henry Metcalf. So he is based out of Utah, and before joining us, he led underwriting for Extra Space, and in his time with them, he underwrote more than 2,000 projects. These were acquisitions as well as land for development. Before that, immediately after Extra Space, he was with Lightbox Storage Partners. They are a storage developer and operator that operate nationwide. And then before that, he did land sourcing and underwriting for the largest home builder in Utah, Ivory Homes. So we really, we're really thrilled to add Henry to the team because he has that mix of direct underwriting and storage experience, as well as many years in specifically land, which is crucial for us as we're going into more land development now. After Henry, so from the, Henry is responsible for making sure that we buy right? Because that's so critical in making sure that the investment performs. Next step from there would be making sure that we're operating right. So that would bring in our COO, Mike Balarjian, and this is where his genius truly shines. He's got over 20 years experience in storage. He started with Public, and then Extra Space, and then most recently with Store Space as a private equity firm. He was their VP of operations, and while he was with them, led their growth from 27 to over 100 stores. And in that same amount of time, while they were growing so rapidly, they also outperformed all of the REITs in revenue and NOI growth. So, excuse me, this was really truly impressive for us to see Mike manage not only exponential growth, but also keep an eye on the details and make sure that each individual store is operating, keeping track of all the dollar and cents, each individual move in, and because all of that adds up across a portfolio. Also, he's seen multiple recessions in this industry, in operations in this industry. And so his insight there of how he has seen storage perform, and he will say, storage is pretty steady, up or down cycles, pretty steady. Haven't seen too many blips. So all of that experience, he's also an absolute gem of a human being. We have the utmost confidence that he is the best person to be guiding our operations and our sites to deliver really their maximum potential. I could go down the rest of the list. I think those are some key roles as far as supporting Sergio and I, and really implementing and delivering on the investment projections. We have some construction development in-house, and then our boots on the ground. We have one in Pennsylvania. We have two in Indiana. Across our portfolio of 14, there's a decent amount of boots on the ground there. Pennsylvania, Indiana, Illinois, Massachusetts, Delaware, and our 4 projects that are under PSA. We're still working through that to get to closing. Hopefully that answered the question. If you want if you want more detail, feel free to reach out to me. I'm an open book. I'll tell you whatever you're looking for.
And we have just 4 minutes left, so we'll try and kind of rapid fire through these. What's increasing demand for self-storage in some of the markets you've selected?
So we are looking in modestly growing markets. We're not in any of the Sunbelt states where you're seeing that incredible explosion, but steady and modest growth. So when we're underwriting the locations, we're just seeing that everybody's full, right? Basic secret shopping, things like that, as well as seeing, some of those other kind of employer or larger economic fundamentals that we talked about a bit when we were diving in on Indiana.
Okay. And, you said someone's asking, what's your future holding period? I think that's just the average time you look to hold on to a deal.
Yeah, it'll probably continue to stay around the 5 to 7 year mark. I believe for the fund that we're launching, I'm hearing that will be evergreen. So that would be something where that'll be continuously open. Investors will be committed to the fund for the first 12 months, and then anytime thereafter you can liquidate as your life requires. Otherwise, for the individual properties, depending on if it's a simple value add where we're just adding some technology and operations, that might be a little bit quicker, maybe a 3 to 5 year. If it's a large expansion or a ground up development, that'll probably be more of a 5 to 7, maybe on the outside 10-year holds, simply because the amount of time to build and lease up and get the project stabilized.
Okay. And Ashish, thank you for asking all these questions here. With rising interest rates and, some other developers maybe just struggling with some payments, are you actively looking for distressed properties? Kind of just
Yes.
focused on your own deals.
Yep. No, we are. I would say deal flow is coming in through a variety of channels right now. So we have broker relationships. We have friends who are very active in real estate where, they'll source something in their own backyard and bring it to us. A deal that we looked at a couple of weeks ago was something that looked to be under developer distress. So we are keeping our eyes open for that as well. Yep.
All right. And what's your break-even occupancy on some of these properties?
That number is escaping me. I know our target occupancy physical is 90%, and our target expense ratio is under 35. And we are hitting our expense ratio. And there's a couple outliers where we're still need to get to the ideal occupancy, but and especially now that it's spring leasing season, we're getting close to that. So hopefully that answers some of that question.
Just so the novices know, if you have a 99 or 100% occupancy, it might be a clue you might need to raise rents, or there's something being missed there.
It's absolutely a clue that you need to raise your rents. We don't want our sweet spot is 90 to 93% occupancy.
I know the technology is improving, but this is not Sunbelt states. There's not a lot of sun, but the technology of solar keeps advancing. So Ashish asked about solar, and there's a lot of tax credits for that type of stuff. I've seen solar in Wisconsin now that has actually worked, but it's not nearly as popular as it is down in Texas where I live now. So have you considered adding, solar to any of these roofs and some of those tax credits?
Yeah, absolutely. Our Indiana expansion, we bought an additional 8 acres that we're turning into just parking. We're looking at that to just do a solar field there. We are also talking with a C-PACE lender and exploring what other things we can do to maximize our properties there. So yes.
Yeah, and that tech is really improving in Illinois and Wisconsin, where I'm from. That wasn't even viable a while ago, and now it's becoming much more viable on a lot of factory roofs or non-residential roofs around there, where the tenant doesn't care as much of the disruption of putting that on a retail residential roof. All right, Corinn, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for asking all these questions. We've had Corinn's email up here, Corinn@hfireholdings.com. Also, we have some very good discount codes if you do not have a Rocket Dollar account. If you're considering an IRA, please talk to Corinn. She has a very good one that she can give you. That's better than some of our other offerings. So thank you, Corinn, so much for coming and being a guest here today.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, everyone else, for hanging out. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day.